Well, I guess we could go ahead and get started on it. Do you want to do the intro?
No, you got it. You got it. It's
Are
all
you
you.
sure?
Yeah, you
Okay.
got it. I appreciate that.
Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I'm your host, Paul.
And I'm Lauren.
And we are joined by our creator of the show, the man responsible for the Film Buds at all, who has been away for some time now. We're joined by the one, the only, Henry.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. It's nice to be back, and thank you for getting all this, together, because I know I only have a short time of leave. But yeah, it's nice to be back. It's been 5 months, I think, since August, and I've been able to watch some movies, not a whole lot, but excited to be here.
No, we're excited to have you. When you and I were talking and trying to put this episode together, and you were telling me what you'd seen, honestly, you'd seen a lot more new things than I had. You were like, "Oh, Venom, Let There Be Carnage," and this, and I was like, "Nope, nope, nope." So when you were like the Green Knight, I was like, "Aha, we have one." So, no, yeah, it's good to have you on. It was definitely strange, stepping into hosting and doing everything on the show after, really just kind of showing up, once a week. So it was a pretty big change, and it felt pretty weird for a little while there to take over the show. But I know that you've been listening, and you've been very encouraging, and I have to definitely thank you for that. Because all the time I'm always worried that I'm making a terrible show. So
Well, that's what I was thinking when I was doing it. So, I've been there. But no, as I've said, was just saying off air, and I've said to you over the last couple of months, I really do appreciate you taking the reins, or both of you really keeping it going. And been able to bring some new ideas and styles and create some new connections and networks and all that stuff that I either wouldn't have ever thought of or just didn't have the time to do. So I appreciate that. But now that I'm back, I can't wait to just tear all that down and just but no, it's been, as you were saying, I've been able to listen most weeks, and if not, then to catch up later on. So yeah, I've been able to stay up to date for the most part, and have enjoyed having hearing Sky Tilly on, every so often, people like that. So, and as well as some of the interviews you've done. So that's been nice.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thankfully people have been really nice enough to come on and be a part of it. And yeah, I like the idea that, Film Buds is a collection of friends beyond just, whoever is in the host seat or the co-host seat at the time. And so it's been a lot of fun going and bringing on these people. And I hadn't really talked to Austin Craver in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting him on the show was a lot of fun, and reconnecting with him was super great. So no, it's been fun.
Yeah.
So we are also celebrating our 200th episode.
Woo!
That's
true.
true.
We officially hit the 200 mark.
That's crazy.
So I was super pleased, when you said that you were going to be able to come on, and I started mapping out the content. I was like, 200,
yeah,
perfect spot to get Henry back.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll also be able to get you on next week as well.
Yeah, that would be nice if at all possible.
Yeah, we're thinking about doing the Gremlins.
Perfect.
So yeah, it's our 200th episode. We're continuing our Christmas theme. And, when Henry said that he had seen The Green Knight and I was trying to put together Christmas content, I was like, aha, it's perfect. It starts on Christmas, it ends on Christmas. So it seemed like such a natural fit.
And which, let me say, was not in my head whatsoever when I was choosing it or when I was suggesting it. So I'm glad you picked up on that. It worked out.
Well, and also I think The Green Knight is, I think that we saw it in theaters the last time we recorded together, the second to last time we recorded together. And so it's this nice little sort of, coalescence of a lot of different things. So it's a good pick. Well, we've got a lot to talk about with the movie. It's quite the piece. And so if you're ready, we can go ahead and get going with it.
I'm not scared.
All right.
Perfect.
So, as always, we have a clip, so let's take a listen.
Friends, brothers and sisters, who can regale me and my queen with some myth or tale?
So that was The Green Knight. It came out in 2021, this year, and the synopsis is a fantasy retelling of the medieval story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It is written and directed by David Lowery, and it stars Dev Patel, Alicia Vikander, Joel Edgerton, Sean Harris, Kate Dickey, Ralph Ineson, and Sarita Chidori. I think that's how you say that. And I do have a little bit of history, if you don't mind me giving some background real quick.
I mean, Paul, at this point, I'm very used to it. I
so
go for it.
For a little bit of background for y'all on Arthurian lore and legend, and the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Essentially, Arthur and all of his tales are kind of weird amalgams of a lot of different things. And the sort of general consensus is that there wasn't really one set Arthur, or if there was an Arthur, he was one of several warlords or military warriors of some kind who helped fend off an Anglo-Saxon invasion of Britain back in like 300 to 400 CE. And that his myth kind of grew and became combined with a lot of Welsh and Irish myth and legend. And that eventually, once the core structure of Arthur was created, then people just started tagging on more and more stuff to it. And so when you go and look at his stories, they're pretty much all either one of a few things, either a battle story, a tragic romance, a story of duty versus love, or an examination of power. There's always, the Sword and the Stone, the Round Table, Camelot, and the Holy Grail. And he always usually has 3 knights that are important. He normally has somewhere between like 12 or a few hundred followers. But his 3 key followers are usually Lancelot, Galahad, and Sir Gawain. And the whole knight lore part of it essentially got established in the 1400s, which is also around the time when Sir Gawain and the Green Knight was written. It is authored, as the movie says, by unknown. However, most historians refer to him as the Gawain poet or the Pearl poet, because Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is amongst only 4 other poems that we know of by this author. And he was a contemporary of Chaucer. It is a about 2,500 line poem that is largely alliterative, with uneven stanzas tied together by rhyme stanzas. And most people think that it's like an absolute masterwork. And the Pearl poet is considered one of the greatest unknown poets of the generation. And so that's a little bit of background for you on Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. The original story is really just sort of a truthfulness tale. It's like a big morale story. And interestingly, Sir Gawain had started out as being perceived in a lot of the stories as like this perfect knight, but then over like several hundred years ended up becoming an asshole in the stories, until we eventually landed on the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And so that's a little bit of a historic overview.
Paul, you took the words right out of my mouth.
But yeah, and so now that that's sort of out of the way, let's get to the good stuff. Henry, what did you think of the movie?
Oh, so sorry. So I like David Lowery a lot. I saw Ain't Them Body Saints, which was his first big movie, and we actually reviewed that on the show, as well as a ghost story really early on. And then Paul, you and I and the other Henry, we talked
Mhm.
about Pete's Dragon on the one of the bonus shows. So I've followed his work a fair bit. I didn't see his most recent movie, The Old Man and the Gun, with
Mhm.
the guy.
Robert Redford.
Yeah. And but so overall, I like him. I usually will watch whatever he does, and this really piqued my interest. Even though I didn't watch the trailer, I love A24 first of all, and then I love medieval history and anything dealing with that. So I was definitely very interested. And I didn't see this in theaters. I saw it just a couple months ago on my phone. Grossly, I had to watch a lot of things on my phone. Um, Overall, I thought it was excellent. I think it's probably my favorite of his. I know some people think A Ghost Story is like the worst film of all time, but I like it. And then I think Ain't Them Body Saints would probably be my second favorite, but I think The Green Knight was definitely feels like his most in command, and it has a fantastical element, but it's not overly done, and it's just plays into the ideas of like masculinity and like um I guess almost like a toxic kind of masculinity. And I thought that was very interesting, as well as the acceptance of death. I thought was kind of interesting, especially towards the end. But it looks amazing. The score is great. I think it's the same guy who's done the scores for all of his movies, but it's a great score. Yeah, it looks amazing. Dev Patel, he's kind of hit and miss for me over the years, but I think this is probably his best. And then Alicia Vikander, I've loved in everything. So yeah, overall, not to go too much of a rant here, but yeah, I thought it was excellent.
Okay.
What did y'all think?
Dear.
I love this movie. I think that it is on every level kind of like what a film should feel like. It is visually just beautiful to watch. It's got a very interesting story. It keeps you on your toes the entire time, you know, because it to the fantastical point, it kind of plays with what you're expecting, and also what is and is not reality. And I think that that's really interesting. So you have to really pay attention. I've never really been like a medieval lore person at all. But I found this one really just intoxicating to watch.
Mhm.
You know, I couldn't look away. To your point, the score is absolutely amazing. I think that Dev Patel is doing a phenomenal job. Everything just kind of lined up for me, just like checks off of my list, you know.
No, yeah. So I'm not overly familiar with David Lowery. Pete's Dragon was the only David Lowery movie that I had seen before this. You know, I had heard of Ain't Them Body Saints and The Old Man and the Gun and his other films, but you know, for this reason or that reason, they were just never, you know, movies that I got around to. And so when we did the Disney bonus episode and we did Pete's Dragon, I was really pleasantly surprised with that movie. It was maybe, you know, a little bit tame by some people's standards. But as far as like the Disney live action remake, I like what it did with it. I liked that it stayed pretty true to what it was, but also made something a little bit different, you know, from the old Pete's Dragon to the new one. And so I saw the trailer for this and I was pretty interested. And going into it, I was like, you know, if he can just land something even really as good as Pete's Dragon, then it'll be pretty good. And I thought that he absolutely exceeded himself, you know, in full. I thought that this was a really, really well done movie. It hints at multiple influences, I think, you know, on top of just Arthurian lore and storytelling itself. I think that there's also a certain Guillermo flair and flavor to it. But I don't think that he's like ashamed of that. I don't think he's trying to like hide that. I think he wears it pretty on the sleeve. I think the cast overall is great. I think it's a really interesting adaptation, and like, you know, Arthurian stories are something that have perpetually changed and warped and been messed with over time. And so I thought that this was a really, really great take on this story, which I had some familiarity with before I saw it. And I think the cast absolutely lands it. I think for me, Dev Patel is definitely, you know, the strong center point of the film, but I think that I think everyone in the cast is doing a phenomenal job. And even though some of them are like the type you would expect them to be, I think that they play them in unique and different sort of ways. So like Sean Harris is a great pick for Arthur, but his Arthur is Arthur at like the end of his life. You know, he's frail. He's, you know, openly more sort of humble in a lot of ways than I think some versions of Arthur portray him. I think that Joel Edgerton does a phenomenal job as the Lord. I think everyone really just lands, you know, even little moments, little characters, I think stick with me, you know. The beheaded maiden that he goes and finds her head for her. Phenomenal scene. She plays the part hauntingly. And it, yeah, you know, to both of y'all's points, it constantly has this questioning of, is it magical realism, or is none of this actually happening, or is all of it actually happening as fantastically sort of as it presents itself? And I think that constant toying is also why that final scene, not to get too far into spoilers or anything, but why that final scene ends up working.
Yeah.
It's because the movie has constantly been toying with you a little bit, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And with David Lowery, I mean, the film is definitely like a slower pace, a more like deliberately slower pace. Like this isn't King Arthur: Legend of the Sword, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, he seems to be like very interested in the kind of more like, I don't know what the right word is, maybe mundane side of things of a story. Like with Pete's Dragon, that's not really a big epic movie. It's pretty quiet. And it's the same thing with Ain't Them Body Saints and A Ghost Story, which, you know, some people may call it boring, but I think for the most part, he kind of pulls it off, and it feels very David Lowery in that way. And I think in this film, it really works. Like it builds a really good atmosphere. And as you were saying, the like little characters like the Barry, is it Barry Keoghan? I think is how you say his last name. The guy who is, his character is very interesting, and a lot of the ones you mentioned. So yeah, it's a really detailed and intricate movie for sure. Probably his most at this point.
Yeah. Well, and like having watched it a second time, you know, there were a lot of things that I really latched onto, you know, in different ways, and certain things that didn't necessarily work for me the first time I thought worked a little bit better this time. So like the first time that I saw it, I was like, we can cut this giant shit. You know? I was like, this is pointless. Get rid of it. But I think it worked for me better this time.
Okay. In what way? I've got curiosity.
Okay, so it sort of, I think, hints at some of his weakness on a certain sense. You know, here he is, he comes, he asks for help, but then the moment that the giant starts to do something, he quavers. You know, he's almost a little bit of a coward. He's a little bit cravenly. You know, he's afraid to commit to the woman. You know, the only reason he ends up hitting the Green Knight is because the Green Knight just kind of stands there and takes the blow, whatever the blow is. It's not like they get into combat to land the blow. And so I think that it ends up sort of hinting again at this fear that he has. You know, he wants honor, you know, but then at the very end of the movie, the Green Knight doesn't mention his honor, he mentions his bravery. You know, and so I think that he's just sort of, it's on a certain level, I think, almost a coming of age story. And I think that scene initially didn't work for me, but I think that it worked better having this framework of like, oh, he's just sort of like a little bit of a generalized coward overall.
Mm-hmm. This movie reminds me a lot of Shakespeare. It really felt kind of that Macbeth feeling.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
This kind of tragic tale almost of this person wanting so badly for their goal, and all of trials coming, you know, in their own different ways, and him being tested at every stage of the journey, and still continuing on his quest, because he could have turned back so many times, but he literally like makes it to the door, you know. Is his final trial, is will he or will he not go through with this, with the game, as they put it, you know. It's really interesting, honestly.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm not mistaken, you know, you mentioned Shakespeare and Macbeth. If I'm not mistaken, Alicia Vikander played Lady Macbeth. No, I'm thinking of someone else. Hold on.
She was in, if it's the Michael Fassbender one, that was Marion Cotillard.
Yes. She has done something Shakespeare. I know she has. But her monologue, you know, her sort of soliloquy, is very much a sort of, you know, out damn spot moment for her character. No, I guess she hasn't actually. Well, she should.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think you're right. I think it has that sort of Shakespearean quality, you know, that nature of a doomed figure. And I think he's also very smart in kind of being a little bit loose with his adaptation, because it's not really a direct one-to-one adaptation, and I think he pulls in a lot of other tones and textures, but he's very aware of it. And when we were watching it yesterday and today, there was a moment where he's talking to Alicia Vikander in the library, and she kind of hints on this whole notion of what these stories came from, which is, you know, sometimes I write down stories that I've been told or things that I've heard. And occasionally, where I think that there's room for improvement, I change them. And so I think that he does this really clever job of taking a story that ultimately used to be about truth and about how it's good to be truthful, and ends up turning it into this, like I said, this coming of age story, this coming to terms with who you are, with, and also with finding sort of your bravery, because, you know, you're right, he does have a lot of opportunities to turn back. The fox tells him to turn back and that it would be better for him to turn back. I still, real quick side note, I still don't get why the fox had to sound like that, but
Paul, you know I love talking animals. When that came on screen.
When you saw the fox, were you just praying that it was going to talk at some point?
Yes, that's what I hope for every animal I see in a film.
But no, I think that it's a really, really cleverly done tale. Yeah, and I think that he manages to play with the narrative in a really clever way.
Well, I think that that's also just kind of the history of this tale in general from your dear history lesson. You know, a lot of people have had their hands on this story and what it means and what they want it to mean and who Arthur is, and definitely I think that's a great moment when she's like, oh yeah, you know, I can just make edits. It's fine. You know, it doesn't matter now. I'm now the one who wrote it down. I can make it whatever I want it to be. And I think that that's exactly kind of Arthurian lore, and honestly a lot of our history as just a culture as well. You know, there was a time that a lot of this stuff was just word of mouth, and so somebody decided to write it down. Whatever their version of it is now the version that we study.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
For sure.
For a little clarification, I suppose I should throw this out there. You know, the synopsis was one thing. Essentially what happens is this dude, the Green Knight, shows up on Christmas Day in the movie, and he issues a challenge. If you strike me, in 1 year's time, you have to come to my chapel, and I'll strike you however you have struck me. And so he chops off his head, and then 1 year later, he's like, okay, you're gonna have to get your head cut off. And to get into the spoiler territory, again, talking about this blending of lore and myth and things like that, when you get to the weird flash forward, the fantasy version of events where he runs away from the Green Knight, it almost reminded me of that old folklore thing about the woman with the ribbon. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, maybe it doesn't.
Okay, so there's this old folklore bit. Carmen Machado took it and ended up writing this incredible short story off of it. And it's this story of like a woman who has this ribbon tied around her neck, and like no one can take the ribbon off, and she can't take the ribbon off. And eventually like a guy comes along and he like pulls the ribbon and it cuts off her head. And so in the original lore, the green thing that he gets is said to give him invincibility, but we never really get that tested, because ultimately it's actually meant to be this extension of the game that he's in. And in this story, they kind of almost make it abundantly clear that like this is going to be the thing that like keeps him alive. And it kind of had this similar feeling to me in that flash forward as that story. This person who they've got this thing tied around him and they can't take it off.
And
then
once he chooses to take it off, then like off goes his head.
And so I thought that it's a super interesting, super effective story. And also I think by setting it at Christmas, you do slightly alter some of the, even just by moving when the story takes place, you do kind of also alter what the story means on a certain level.
The moral? No, I get that. Because you said that it was, earlier, you said that it was originally New Year's?
Yeah, so in the original tale, it's New Year's Day to New Year's Day.
Happy.
So yeah. So Henry, would you consider this a Christmas film?
No. I wouldn't.
Okay. No, I think.
But, I mean, if someone does, I don't have the energy to fight you.
Well, now that we have you here, I guess just as a quick tangential note, what for you has to? What are the boxes that have to be checked for it to be a Christmas movie?
I mean, I don't know if I have necessarily a checklist. I guess I'm pretty basic when it comes to like what a Christmas movie is. Just like a Home Alone or a I know you put The Nice Guys on a list, Paul. We'll have to talk about that later. But like I guess I am just pretty basic. Like, I mean, Christmas time obviously, but then I don't even know what the right word would be. Like this movie doesn't, like when it's Christmas time, I'm not like I have to watch The Green Knight. It's not necessarily like, I mean, because I guess Christmas in like a cliche way, it's about coming together, feeling good about loving family, friends, whatever it may be, and so giving to others. And so I don't know if this really strikes me as preaching that in a way. So like, I mean, well, I mean, what about for y'all? I mean, because I know y'all, I mean, at least from what I've seen of Paul's lists, his are a little bit more obscure.
I like that, obscure. No, I definitely tend to, my usual Christmas movies are definitely the ones that like ooze Christmas on every level, like the Home Alone. I enjoy Jim Carrey's The Grinch movie. I know I am in the minority in that. A lot of people find that movie very creepy, but I always loved it. And because Whoville looks like Christmas. Like that's always how I imagine Christmas to feel. It's like everybody decked their halls to the maximum, Christmas is the best time of year, and I always felt like they really encapsulated that. But
Yeah.
I also really enjoy the random movies that are just like happen to be set at Christmas, but other than that, like really aren't a Christmas story at all. Kind of like, I guess, all of the not Iron Man 3,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
where it's like Christmas is just like a thing
It's
that's happening.
happening.
So, when I'm not feeling, I guess, as cheery, I usually go to the extreme Christmas ones are directly around the holiday itself.
Mhm.
But then for like the rest of December, I'm just kind of like, yeah, like wintry films are fine. I also like the claymation ones a lot.
The Rankin Bass.
Yeah, love them. The Year Without a Santa, great. Classic.
Yeah, like I mean, as you're just saying, ones that really use Christmas as like a backdrop, like any Shane Black movie, like that. Usually, I won't watch those around Christmas because I don't think of them. That's not what I think about when I think about those movies. So, like, if I watch Iron Man 3 in June, I'll be like, "Oh, right, this is at like Christmas time." Whereas something like, I don't know, an obvious one like Home Alone or something that's really strikes me more as a film like, oh, right, it's like Christmas time, I'll watch that, but which I did. That's good. Well, Paul, what about you? Any other thoughts?
I think for me, this maybe isn't necessarily a true Christmas film. I think it kind of fits some of the ideas, right? There's a miracle, there's personal growth, there's accountability, there's kind of this penultimate figure of either his doing right or his doing wrong. And so I think it kind of checks some of the boxes, but also to your point, no, it definitely doesn't really have any of the other trappings of a Christmas story. And it doesn't really have that feeling that you have to watch it at Christmas. It is definitely a little bit more of a sort of, any time of year movie versus some of the other ones that we've watched, for this month or just for our own personal watch. I think that there are degrees of Christmas,
Mhm.
and yeah, like Iron Man 3, even though it is at Christmas, definitely is not really a Christmas movie. So I think that this maybe is still on the spectrum for me, but it's definitely on the lighter side of it, where it's not overtly trying to tell you a Christmas story.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, on a certain level, I think that the original story almost smacks a little bit more of a Christmas story because it's about being honest. He goes and he lies and he gets in trouble for it, kind of a thing, which
Mhm.
to me smacks more of a Christmas narrative directly.
I felt like it was as Christmassy as it could be while still feeling appropriate to the time period.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're in like the Middle Ages. There's people aren't going to have Christmas trees. That's a more modern thing that we've done. The decorations. It's not about all of those things. I loved the halos in their crowns.
Mhm.
Oh
Very
yeah.
very Virgin Mary, very virgin birth kind of thing. And I think that they like leaned more into it being, I guess, closer to Christianity's base than necessarily, I guess, our modern interpretation
Mhm.
of Christmas. But I do also agree that it's not, it is at Christmas, but it is not necessarily a Christmas movie.
Yeah,
No,
and
for
like,
sure.
and even I don't even really need it to be a happy movie to be considered a Christmas movie. Like I know FX did this adaptation of A Christmas Carol a couple years ago with Guy Pearce. That's like, it's a very dark story or dark telling of it, but it still strikes me as something that really speaks more about Christmas. Whereas I feel like it's really used more as a backdrop, and it's not really, at least to me, it didn't. That's not something I would think of when I think of like a Christmas movie. But it's at Christmas, so there you go. Somebody out there, I'm sure, does.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and I've seen also just in general a whole bunch of other stuff getting added to, sort of people's Christmas canon. On film Twitter, I've seen people talking about Carol being a Christmas movie.
I mean, that one I could see more of an argument for.
I saw some people who run like a Lord of the Rings podcast making the claim that the Lord of the Rings films are Christmas movies.
No.
We're really splitting these hairs.
Freeform or one of those would have you believe that all the Harry Potter films are, just because most of them prominently feature Christmas. So, but again, we're getting into the splitting of hairs.
I mean, I think, even if all of them don't really strike me as Christmas movies, around Christmas time, I do kind of get a Harry Potter vibe. So that one I could see more of an argument for, is like Harry Potter. That's because it has so many of this, similar ideas or relevant themes. So I get that.
So Henry, any other thoughts on The Green Knight?
Nothing in particular. I've only seen it the one time, but it's still pretty vivid in my memory. And I think it would get even better on rewatch. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Other than that, not really. I mean, how does this compare? I know y'all have only seen Pete's Dragon. How would this compare to, I don't know, either other medieval films or maybe even other A24 films, recent ones, if there are any that come to mind? It's kind of a hard one to compare to, because it is so in its own space. But
yeah, compared to other, sort of sword epics or other takes on Arthur stories, when I grew up, the King Arthur movie that I watched the most and liked the most was Anton Fuqua's King Arthur, with Clive Owen, Keira Knightley, Ioan Gruffudd, and others. And actually, a little fun fact about that movie: Joel Edgerton, who plays the Lord in Green Knight, played Sir Gawain in the old King Arthur movie.
that's true. Yeah.
And Hugh Dancy played Galahad. So I think for me, that movie was really trying to do this grounding of the lore in reality, and it was really trying to make it more of like almost like a Gladiator, kind of film where, it's super stripped of a lot of the magic and the magistry and things like that. And we're really trying to tell a historically accurate Arthur story, even though we have no historical record of this person. And so for me, I really enjoyed that movie as a kid. I got the director's cut when it came out on DVD. I haven't rewatched that movie in forever, so I have no idea how well it holds up. But if I was going off of my memory of what I have of that to this, I think this is, I think that this is overall a better film. But furthermore, I think that it does, capture more directly of what people imagine when they think of an Arthur story. I haven't seen the Charlie Hunnam, Guy Ritchie.
Oh, you got
it. What's it called? Excalibur? Is that one? No.
Legend of the Sword?
Yeah, I think so.
Great film.
So I haven't seen that one. I'm not opposed to seeing it, but it isn't one that I've ever really had the drive to go out and see either. I liked how big and grandiose and weird it looked, but then I saw more and more of it and I was like, this looks not great. So
well, I mean, Paul, I'll take you through my journey of watching that. First time I saw it in theater, hated it. Second time I saw it on Blu-ray, this isn't bad. Third time, went winner.
Okay.
Had a great comeback. Great comeback.
I might have to give it a watch. But then as far as other A24 releases, A24 is largely a distributor. They do, I think, dabble a little bit in the producer side of things, but I also know that they give a lot of free reign, you know, when they do pick up a film. You know, when they get one, they don't usually go in and meddle. And I think that all of their stuff is very effective to varying degrees, and I think that this slides right in league with all the others, you know, like Ex Machina, The Lighthouse, Hereditary. You know, they really operate in a place that people like Fox Searchlight and Focus Features used to do, and so they're definitely filling a void that in today's media landscape definitely needs to be sort of protected and cherished. And I think that they really see that, you know, artistry is commercially viable. And so for me, this definitely fits in line with everything that they normally do. I would love to see one of the script books that they put out. I would get, you know, the Green Knight if they did one of those. Because I have 3 of them. I have The Witch, Ex Machina, and I'm blanking on what the third one is. Not Hereditary.
Midsummer?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's in
It's in the other room, so I'm not gonna. But if this script ended up being turned into one of those books, I absolutely would get it in a heartbeat. Dear, what about you?
So, okay, first question. So Arthur, or I guess medieval times stories just in general for me, are all over the board of what I've consumed in my time on this earth. It ranges all the way from Disney's Sword in the Stone to like A Knight's Tale to
Classic.
Oh yeah, great movie. To honestly, like, oh gosh, I just had it. Robin Hood Men in Tights. So like, it's really just there's this one is what I would consider to be like, you know, oh, you know, this is art right here. Whereas like, you know, A Knight's Tale is more definitely close to what would be, I guess, a what am I trying to say? Based in reality, more so, I would say, you know, without all the magicalness and without all of the interesting storytelling of the film and how it's put together and the editing and such. Whereas like, you know, Robin Hood Men in Tights is a comedy, and it's kind of poking fun at literally all of it. So it really got just a horrible range over here. But for A24, I think that this one slides perfectly right on in with the others. I this is a movie that I think about a lot, and I feel like that's how I feel about a lot of A24 movies. It's just, you know, like Ex Machina had me up at night after watching that movie, just going like, oh man, couldn't have made anything like this if I tried, you know, or the Witch, who's such an interesting movie. So I think, honestly, I feel like this is just like the next chapter in the book for me. You know, I second your opinion of if it came out as a script, I would love to read it, because I think that I'm gonna call her the matron of the house's monologue. I think about that a lot, about her why is he green versus any other color. And I think that it's so interesting, and I love her like weird turn in it, of it being like an innocent conversation to her being like very pointedly like having an opinion about this. But yeah, no, I think that it's just really interesting. It's a really beautiful movie just to watch. Like, even if you didn't have the sound on, I just think that all of like, I could pause this movie at any time and be like, frame it.
That's fair.
What about you, Henry?
I mean, I guess it is kind of hard to like. I mean, A24, as I said, I love A24, and I guess this is definitely one of their better ones in recent years. They've had some other good ones recently, but I think they had a couple years where they kind of dipped a little bit. But I think this was definitely one of their stronger ones. And comparing it to like other medieval movies, I guess it is kind of hard because a lot of them are big action films, whereas this is very quiet and slow. And so I would almost compare it to like a TV show, like Vikings or Rome or something like that, where it's a little bit more about the characters and it's slower paced. And I don't know if y'all saw this year The Last Duel, the Ridley Scott medieval film. That one was quite good. I think I like that one a little bit more than this, but also because Ridley Scott blamed millennials for everything, for the why it bombed. Anyways,
get in line, man. We get blamed for everything.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's one of my favorite films of the year. Either way, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, what would you give out of 5 The Green Knight?
Gosh, out of 5, I'll go 4.5.
Okay.
I could see it going up to a 5 on rewatch.
Okay.
You?
Well, 5. I loved this movie. I could watch this movie, on repeat instead of whatever they watch on Christmas Day. Oh, gosh, what did I watch one year for Christmas? It was like the one with the I can't put my arms down. God, what's the name of that movie?
Christmas Story?
Yeah, Christmas Story. I'd rather watch this on repeat than A Christmas Story on repeat.
That's fair enough.
I'm going to second the 5. I think that it's a really intelligent film. I think it's very layered. Like, I could really go into a whole breakdown on it, especially after the second watch, how when he finally gets the crown on it, it's oxidized to have green overtaking it, and how she talks about how green will overtake everything. And so, like, I think it's just a really, really excellently crafted movie. And so I'm kind of inclined to give it a 5 as well. I'm going to give it a 5. I do have one more question about it now that we're also sort of done with the rating. Major spoilers. Do you think he died at the end? We cut to black. Do you think Sir Gawain made it out or not?
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna be cynical.
You think that he got beheaded in full?
Yeah, he's fucked.
Okay. Dear, what about you?
See, I don't think that the knight goes through with it after,
Yeah.
after all of this. I think that the test was whether or not he was willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he fully accepts his fate and, takes off the belt and is like, whatever happens, happens. I think that is the moment that the Green Knight is like, cool, you've passed. Good day,
When I first saw it, I thought he was dead. The second time that I saw it, partially based on how the moment struck me, but also partially based on some things that people say leading up to it, I think he does live. And I think, off with your head, I think actually him drawing his finger across the neck was him sort of returning the blow.
Yeah.
And then off with your head was more of an instruction, off with you, off with your head. And I think that it reads a little bit more as a, in that sort of direction.
No, yeah, because I think that it was like a whole test of nobility and honor, and I think that once he was willing to basically make the ultimate sacrifice, that was enough. That he had been deemed worthy by the gods or whatever, and he could live his life now in going down the right path instead of what he would have done, which was the weird like foreword that we got of what his fate could be if he had run away and been a coward. He was always going to be a coward.
Let me tell you, the original ending of the story is super weird. So in the original, are you familiar with the original text? Okay. So in the original text, he does the whole thing where, and again, it's this repeated idea of gamesmanship and gaming. He goes and he makes the agreement with the Lord of the house, who's like, I'll go out and get something. When I come back, you'll give me what you get here. And so day one, he gets a kiss. And so when the lord of the house comes, he kisses him. And the next day, the lady of the house gives him 2 kisses. And so when the lord comes back with more game, he gets 2. Third day, he gets 3 kisses, but then he also gets the green sash, the girdle. And she's like, this will make you invincible. And he's like, oh, okay. And he keeps it. And when the Lord comes back, he only gives him the 3 kisses. He does not return the gift to him. And so then he gets all the way out to the Green Chapel, and he does 2 fake outs. And, you know, like he does some whinging and some wincing, and he mocks him for it. And so then finally he's like, all right, I'll do it. And he goes and he just nicks him. And Gawain gets sort of irritated and doesn't understand. And he's like, I drew blood from you for lying. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, ha ha. And it turns out that the Green Knight was actually the lord of the house the whole time. And this has all been an elaborate thing staged by Morgan Le Fay, Arthur's half-sister, to sort of test him. And then moving forward, you know, he's decided to be brave and true now that he's learned his lesson. But then from that day forth, he and all of the other knights of the Round Table wear a green sash to remind them of, you know, the sin of dishonesty and the value of telling the truth. And so that's the original ending. So the original ending's a totally weirder experience.
Yeah.
It's got a lot more kissing in it.
Yeah. So yeah, there's there you have it. That's the original ending of the story. So
Okay.
I think that's about all that we have on the Green Knight. I guess we could jump into some sort of general news. You know, the big news is Spider-Man is killing it.
Yeah.
It's crushing it at the box office. I haven't gone. I'm probably not going to go for a while. If I ever go. I might just wait until it comes out later. But I mean, like, it's absolutely dominating it. It's now the 2nd largest weekend release ever. I think it ended up grossing like 260 million opening weekend.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So it has a better release than Force Awakens, and it's just under Endgame by like a few dozen million.
Damn.
I mean, give the people what they want, I guess.
Yeah. I love having things regurgitated to me.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen it yet? Are you going to?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with someone tomorrow while I'm here. Yeah, I haven't been able to go to and I just got my booster shot yesterday, so I'm feeling a little
off.
Yeah, a little off. But yeah, I'm gonna go tomorrow just because it'll be one of my few chances to go see a movie. But which, you know, I'm not dying to see it, but you know, it's fine.
Well, and admittedly, you know, of things to see, you know, I'm sure that the spectacle of it will be enjoyable, you know, even if you end up not necessarily liking the film.
Exactly.
It definitely is spectacle. And so if you are going to only be able to, you know, while you're in town, see one, that's probably one that's more worth trying to see.
I agree. Yeah.
It just dropped today. The new Matrix movie just came out.
Yes.
So I might end up giving that a check out later. Also today is the drop of the Hawkeye finale.
Okay. Have y'all seen any of that?
Yeah, we've been keeping up with it weekly.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen any of it yet, so I'm curious.
It's good. It's not great. I think I think it had some stronger elements early on, and it has a little bit of a saggy middle for me.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the finale has in store for us. It is also set at Christmas time, so perfect for this time. You know,
perfect.
binge
Yeah.
it.
And then like we just went through and rewatched all of the Matrix movies, and so we'll probably catch Resurrections. It's got the last time I checked, it was sitting at like a 67 with 85 reviews
Yeah,
on Rotten Tomatoes.
doing fairly well.
Yeah, you know. So, but that's again probably, I don't know if that one's in theaters or just on HBO. But I'll probably end up just catching it here at home on HBO.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Oh, other big news. We haven't watched it yet, but the trailer did just drop. I watched like little snippets of it without any volume for the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The new trailer and poster just came out. It was attached to the end of Spider-Man No Way Home as the post-credit scene. Which they don't normally do. Someone was like, they've never done it before, and that's not technically accurate. They did it with Captain America, the First Avenger. The end of Captain America had a little teaser trailer, not very long, for the Avengers, because it was 1 year before.
Okay.
That's all kind of the big media news as far as I can think of. Yeah. And then as far as what we've been watching, we've just been watching Christmas stuff. Like, we haven't really had a chance to.
I mean, Christmas and Matrix.
Yeah. So.
Well, what are some Christmas movies y'all have watched? Out of curiosity.
The ones for the show.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
I guess the only thing that we watched outside of show stuff
was Elf.
Yeah, we watched that with the family.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, is there anything else that you've been watching that now that you've been home and have a little bit more time?
So yeah, towards the end of the prep course, I had a lot more free time to where I could catch up on stuff. So I did see a handful of stuff, and I'll just try and burn through these so I don't use up too much of anybody's time. So I saw Venom: Let There Be Carnage, which was not great. And I like the first one to a certain extent, but I think this one, I think Woody Harrelson, as much as I loved him, the character just was not well done. I think his performance just didn't really fit. And just the overall story, I just didn't really have any real heart to it. It just felt very by the numbers. And so, yeah, it was had moments. It's not horrible by any means, but it wasn't a great sequel. Then I saw The Forever Purge, which is the fifth and final Purge, supposedly. And it's all about if instead of the Purge being just 12 hours or 24 hours, what if the Purge was all the time? And it was okay. I don't want to sound like overly cynical about all these movies, but it was okay. It kind of had a Western element, which was interesting, but it didn't do a whole lot with that. So I wish it had. And I feel like a lot of the movies could be great if they actually had like a director and someone who could really take it and do some really potent social commentary. But it was all right. And then to just keep repeating myself, I watched Old, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and it was just okay. Hopefully
you're just having a tough go, man.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't people's first impression. I mean, hopefully you've heard a little bit of my previous work, but so Old is this family goes to this beach, like towards the location, and suddenly they start aging rapidly, and it's just all about the sudden impact of all of that, and then trying to figure out how to get out and what's going on. And I mean, M. Night Shyamalan, I love, and I'll watch whatever he does. I think the ideas are very interesting, but he just goes so far with it and tries to jam so much into it that it's just not all that memorable by the end, and it's kind of goofy also. Then I watched let's see here, I watched Spencer, the Princess Diana biopic, quote unquote, with Kristen Stewart, which I think is probably my favorite movie of the year, and it's by the guy who did Jackie with Natalie Portman. And yeah, I mean, Kristen Stewart is amazing in it. The score is by Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, and it's a great score, and it's a very small slice of life as opposed to being like her whole life. And it's much more unsettling and eerie than I thought it would be, but kind of in a good way. It's kind of like a paranoia psychological breakdown. So that was quite interesting. Then I watched Halloween Kills.
Yeah.
I know y'all loved it, or at least I know Paul loved it. Did you like it?
Oh yeah, no, horrifying. trying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Sky Tilly, quote unquote, called it trash. And I'm so glad he's not here so I can just run unopposed with it. I thought it was awesome.
Hell yeah, there we go.
Like, I thought it's not like I don't know if it does anything that's groundbreaking, but definitely the goriest one. But also, I think, as opposed to like the Rob Zombie ones, the most creative. Like, I thought all the kills were very entertaining, quote unquote, or well done. I thought some of the ideas towards the end were very interesting, and I thought it was just very, like, I was never bored. Like, I thought it flowed really well, and I thought David Gordon Green really directed it well, and I thought, and the score by John Carpenter and Family or Friends, I can't remember who else it was, but that was awesome. So it's one of my favorites of the year for sure.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And then that might be about it here. Let's see. I watched one movie from last year I watched called Shadow in the Cloud with Chloe Grace Moretz.
Okay.
And it's this World War II fantasy film where she is a air crew member on this plane, I think flying over maybe the Pacific or something. But there are these, this sounds so stupid. There are like these goblin like creatures that the Japanese are using to attack planes. And it's a very like self-contained, like it's basically is all on this one plane. And it's mostly just her that you're seeing. You're only hearing voices from other people on the plane. And it was okay. I feel like I kind of had a bad run of choices, unfortunately, but it was, I like Chloe Grace Moretz. She's kind of grown on me over the years, and I really enjoy World War II history. So, I mean, if you like self-aware B movies, I might recommend it, but I wish it had done a little bit more than it did. But still kind of a cool little one-off movie that I feel like kind of just went under the radar completely.
Okay.
And other than that, I don't know if I have any other new releases. I've just been rewatching, this and that to stay entertained. So yeah, that might be about it.
Okay. Well, that's not a bad list.
Yeah.
And again, you've definitely seen a lot more new stuff than we have. Actually, we're thinking about having January be sort of a what we missed month, where we go back and cover a lot of the things that came out through 2021 that just didn't fit with what we were doing, or we didn't have the time for, or were only in theaters. And so, yeah, we'll probably end up doing some of that and covering some of those that you just talked about, probably. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because like over the last 2 months, we would be so tired that I would just like, we'd be in bed by like 8 o'clock. And so I would just like, we'd be out. And so movies would only be really maybe on the weekends or something, or when we've had time off over the last couple of weeks. So I've been kind of stuffing stuff in. But yeah, I think that's about it for me, Paul.
Okay. Well, I think that's honestly just about all that we have for y'all today. Lauren is going to do a little Christmas history lesson, but we're going to record that sort of separately and tag it on. And so we'll have that out probably either with this episode, or it'll be attached to next week's. And then next week we're going to do Gremlins, and probably also Gremlins 2. Henry, will probably be joining us. And yeah, I think that's just about all that we have. Be sure to tune in next week. Henry, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are, wanting to see you and then spend time with you while you're here.
But no, yeah, thank you.
To have you.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And yeah, it's been nice to be back on after so long. And yeah, I hope I can be on again next week. Yeah,
absolutely. Beyond that, stay safe, everyone. If you do go to the theaters, wear a mask, maybe wear two. Yeah, no movie is worth catching any sort of sickness, whether it be, COVID or the flu. There's really no movie that's worth any kind of ailment or injury. So be safe
True.
out there. This episode is going to be coming out on Christmas Eve, so also Merry Christmas to everyone who is observing the holiday. And remember to be good to each other.
Yeah.
Have a good time, everyone, and we'll see y'all next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.